are these people?
We're going to have a good time with this one, I feel. All right, you ready, Care Bear?
Sure thing.
Let's do it.
I really wanted to talk about this because I was just so livid last week in terms of certain personalities, those being Kyle Kalinske and Jordan Charlton in particular, calling just regular citizens nihilist or defeatist in terms of, Nina Turner's congressional race against Shontel Brown. And, rightly so, people are not with it. And I just see this whole thing as a low-key way of punching down, and blaming the citizens versus keeping politicians accountable for the things that they're supposed to do. So this is just kind of more like, rebuttal to the idea that of Kyle and Jordan kind of saying that we're nihilist, that we're defeatist, that Nina's our best shot. She's our last hope to try to push the squad to, do something in terms of pushing progressive policy. So I just kind of wanted to, so this is not necessarily news. This is just more of my take of how essentially we're not a nihilist. And Kyle, I think, needs to go back to high school because he needs to check up on what nihilist means. But then again, this is the same person who redefined corruption.
Wait, though, like maybe he hasn't seen The Big Lebowski. Because if you've
We
ever
are
watched
not
the movie The Big Lebowski,
nihilists. I have the clip. I have the clip. We'll see it in a bit. We're on it. It's a nice marmot. We believe in nothing.
We believe in nothing. We believe in nothing.
Yeah. And I'll get into that.
I'm actually almost there, though, Collin. I have to be honest. But
yeah, I can't.
No, it's fine.
You.
But you know what, though? Like, I definitely, Tara, since you're here, I definitely appreciate, since you have worked in government. So I definitely would appreciate, from that standpoint, what you think in terms of, about this issue. So just for those who do not know or haven't heard what Jordan and Kyle said, we'll just play a couple of clips for you where they actually, called regular people nihilists and defeatists, and we'll take it from there.
Yep, I got you. Why is it muted?
Their Star Small is doing, their Starbucks right here in my city, whether it's Clifton Avenue or West 6th Street or the one in Maple Heights, or excuse me, not Maple Heights, Mayfield Road in Cleveland Heights, just all of the various Starbucks right here in the greater Cleveland area. All of those wins and attempts to give people so much courage. What happened in Staten Island probably, is owed to what they were able to do in Bessemer, Alabama. Even though they didn't come with the brass ring, it was just one more step in the right direction and one more move to motivate people to keep on fighting. So it's the combination of all of these things that I believe that the progressive movement should look at as we critique and judge ourselves and not get caught up and what the mainstream media has to say about this movement, because the overwhelming majority of the American people are right where this movement is. They might not, Crystal, and they might not, Kyle, call themselves progressives. If we take the label off and you just talk to people about, is your health care enough? Is it serving you? Are you making enough money on your job? Would you like to see things change in this society that gives you more than a fighting chance to live out your greatest greatness? Most people, no matter how they identify politically, are going to say, yeah, I would like to see more done. That unionist movement is an example of that. You got people who were probably Bernie-crats, Clintonites, Trumpites, Green Party, no party, all uniting based on what they had in common. And what they had in common was a drive and a determination to say, we deserve more. We deserve better. We're going to put our political ideology on the side and fight like hell to get that better. And that's benefits, that's wages, and that's work conditions. This is the roadmap that the progressive movement needs to use so that we keep on fighting. We cannot get weary in well doing.
Well, I think your point about Bessemer leading to Staten Island is actually really important. And we know that Chris Smalls and Derek Palmer and their team went down to Bessemer to see what they could learn from that fight. They didn't watch the defeat of that. And by the way, Amazon cheated and there was a redo and the results of that are still ongoing. So they may have actually pulled it off the second time around. There's still some hope there. But they didn't look at that initial defeat and say, unionization, it just doesn't work. Forget about it. Instead, they said, okay, what did they do that didn't land, that didn't work, that we think we can improve upon for our own movement and for our own union drive on Staten Island? And so they took those learnings and they pushed the ball forward. And now you have a spark that, you know, again, has ignited across the country. With the latest that he said is they've had 100 Amazon buildings across the nation reach out to them about organizing. I mean,
did you want this whole thing, Collin?
No, actually, no. So if you just play it from 3:30,
yeah,
and then play for like a minute.
Yeah.
We don't need to listen to all of this.
3:30, you say?
Yes.
Yep. I'm on it. And 3:30, Bip. Play.
The point that both you guys just brought to my mind now, which I never thought of before, is that it actually doesn't take much to get people going again. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's unexpected as to where it comes from.
That's right.
But yeah, whenever you start, you know, notching little victories here and there, it's like victories beget more victories. And then next thing you know, you're off to the races. So, I mean, look, I'm sympathetic on the one hand to those who have almost conceded to the nihilism, because I get where that urge comes from and everybody on their worst days feels like that.
Oh, yeah.
But then on the other hand, you know, and I know I make this corny analogy all the time and people want me to shut up making it, but it actually matters to me. I think of like Michael Jordan playing a game with the flu, you know, and that was like one of his most legendary performances. Tiger Woods winning the US Open on a broken leg. The greats push through despite the odds. And in fact, they almost look at everything being biased against them as yet another good reason to shine and try even harder. And so that, I feel like that energy needs to be something fully embraced by the left, as opposed to defeatism and nihilism. You stare in the eyes, you know, whatever the mountain is that you're trying to climb, and you're like, mountains don't have eyes. But you stare at them and you're like, I'm going to do this. Like, we're going to do this, and we're not going to stop at anything until we actually win.
That's it, Kyle. And that's one of the reasons why I am running again. That is exactly it. And you know what, the forces against what we're trying to do, they want people to lose hope. They want people to get so discouraged and frustrated that they throw up their hands and say, I'm not going to try anymore. That is what they want. And we cannot give them what they want, because they understand what we need to understand even on our worst day, that when conscious-minded people from all walks of life unite, maybe there is no force on this earth more powerful.
More powerful than uniting.
Yeah.
Where have we heard that before?
Right. So let's go to the next one. So you basically heard Kyle going off on us, essentially being like, and Crystal.
And so, yeah, what Christian Small.
That we're nihilist, that we're defeatist, because we're not necessarily supporting the last hope, so to speak.
Right.
So now we're going to listen to Jordan. And I watched this stream live last week, and I will admit I was a little heated because this stream was kind of related to JB Font, friend of the network, friend to the show, about a tweet that Jordan retweeted to kind of basically build this point as far as defeatism. So I watched that stream then, but basically pissed for Jordan basically using JB's tweet to kind of justify the argument of, you know, how we should be supporting Nina Turner. So I actually watched it last night, and I think if I listening to the whole stream again and being more calm, like there was some good points that Jordan and Steve, I believe it was, did make. But it was still kind of in the veil of punching down and kind of blaming the voters and just being like, oh, you have to vote. You not have to, but we should throw our support for Nina Turner because, you know, she could make the difference as far as having somewhat progressive, you know, in Congress. So, Reef, if you just play it from 620,
yep, to 750.
750, yep.
Yeah. By the way, in slides, you can set hard stops, FYI.
Just showed you with Cori Bush, not undoable. So that's the first part, Steve. She has a chance. And frankly, there's not a lot of coverage right now of her campaign. And there's a lot of YouTube hosts. Again, I'm not attacking Jay. I don't know him. Probably a good guy. Not attacking Revolutionary Black Network. They can respect, I respect if they think differently. But there's a lot of hosts basically, I would say, suggesting to people don't get involved. Don't, if you're in Cleveland, don't bother voting for her. And if you're outside of Cleveland, don't volunteer or donate or whatever. To me, to be clear, Steve, and I think you and I agree with this, you and I agree on this, I don't actually think structural change in America is coming from electoral politics. I have traveled the country for 7 years. So I would say to the people who feel like Jay, like she's going to lose, and also other folks who say, yeah, she's okay, but I'm not voting for a Democrat. I actually understand why you feel this way. I'm not slamming you. I'm not even criticizing you, because you want to know something? A lot of those people saying this got involved with politics for the first time because of Bernie and then the squad. So it's kind of a human instinct. If the people that got you involved and excited in the first place are letting you down now, which they are, yeah, you're going to just say, fuck it. I'm not repeating the same thing over and over again, and focus on other things. So I understand it. This is not to demonize people. I would think you feel the same way, Steve.
Okay, you can stop there.
Yep.
So Jordan was a little better, but still in the veil of, kind of punching down as far as putting the blame on us instead of, putting more of the responsibility on our government leaders. So, so let's do this. Putting on my teacher hat, we got to define what defeatism and nihilism means, because as I said, I think Kyle needs to go back to high school when you actually had word smart and we had to learn these words. So defeatism, defined by Merriam-Webster, is an attitude of accepting, expecting, or being resigned to defeat. So given that definition, and given what many of us have said in this space, especially some of the smaller channels have said in regards to electoral politics. Now, there's a lot of debate in terms of whether we should focus on electoral politics or we should focus on, other alternatives such as direct action or mutual aid efforts. There will be people who are just kind of tuned out as far as being uninvolved in politics at all, because, people are seeing that, we vote them in, they don't do anything, lives are not changing. And so what's the point? So there are a lot of people who are on that, trajectory of thinking that way, and rightly so, in my opinion. But what got me heated with Kyle and Jordan last week in particular was there was no nuance as to asking why people are disengaged, and why is it that people are not necessarily going to make the effort to go out and vote. And I think there's a lot of responsible commentators, like Savvy in particular, who have mentioned, people are not, especially in this space, are not trying to tune out, because we're on the ground generally, and we see the reality, and we want things to be better for our families, for the people around us, for our neighbors, whatever else. And so we're just asking for a different strategy other than electoral politics, in the means of, one, helping people right now who need help, because we can't afford to wait another election cycle or more in the hope that we'll get Medicare for all, or in the hope that, we get, by that point, it'll be too late, it'll be too little, like a $15 minimum wage, or student loan forgiveness, anything that is considered more progressive. We don't have time to wait for that, And so my frustration with Kyle and Jordan is basically the lack of urgency in terms of, and Jordan especially, since he is a journalist and he has talked to people like in the trenches, and he should know better as far as how people are disengaged, you know, but they're not bringing this up. They're not bringing the idea of, you know, talking to regular people and how we might be feeling, but rather talking within their circles, which are more of the elite circles, and having it be more separate from what we experience on a day-to-day. And so I just got really frustrated with Jordan and Kyle for, again, kind of putting the blame on the voters when there is no talk about, okay, the squad in the last couple of years especially have not done shit as far as pushing for any progressive policy, have gone to bat for the establishment, basically talked positively about the establishment, and essentially, as I say, have basically become, you know, like Instagram followers, you know, just as far as, you know, trying to sheepdog people into the Democratic Party, essentially, you know. There is no talk of what mechanism that if in the event that our politicians do not do their job, you know, what should we do? Kyle doesn't mention that. Jordan doesn't mention that. And I don't believe any of the larger YouTube commentators mention that, or especially if they're in that space where they're able to speak to a politician, ask that. And so, you know, and the reason why they're probably not going to ask that is because it doesn't fit within the branding, especially for Kyle, being a former co-founder of Justice Democrats. He still gets the benefit from the idea of pushing that group in, you know, into the Democratic Party. Tara, do you have any thoughts? Speaking, you know, just within, in terms of you actually being in government, you know, do you have any thoughts based on what Jordan and Kyle have said?
Well, besides being in government, I was an operative and a Democratic operative for a while when I was younger. And, you know, when it was before my time slightly, but one of the strategies that shaped some of what you're seeing now on a bigger level was the Ross-Perot race. Ross-Perot divided the Republican vote. That set a tone and a model, if you will, that the Democrats then used with the Green Party. Republicans funded the Green Party to sow discord within the Democratic Party, and the Democrats infiltrated the Green Party to do more. So what I'm seeing is what is basically, if you're working at Democratic National Committee leadership, this is a dream. The internet, the YouTube, the infighting, what you're seeing, this is a dream scenario for them.
Yeah.
Because that's what they want. They want it divided because what was happening was the stats were going up and up and up as far as progressive agendas. It became 40% was the largest of the Democratic Party came, you know, to where we are probably philosophically wanting, you know, to cancel student loans, Medicare for all, these basic progressive things that those candidates that we were so excited about, right, and then did nothing, right? Well, that was 40% of the base. And so by dividing and causing rifts and causing problems, you get rid of that fray and you just get everyone over to the moderate. And frankly, Donald Trump talking about running again and some of his supporters is also a dream for them, because then they can unite that base that's not getting anything. They don't even have to throw them crumbs, right? Not even crumbs. So what I'm seeing is that it's just kind of all playing out very much how strategically how the DNC wants it to play out, and they'll weaponize and use the media to do it. Now, as far as personalities, I happen to really respect Crystal Ball, and I really I mean, she took on my story at a very difficult time and had me on at a time when it was very controversial to do so. So I give her credit for that. And she was very fair with me, and she was very fair with my story all the way through. Kyle follows me and has been fair too, but I tend to stay away from Justice Democrats. And the reason is that they have troll farms that actually weaponize and go after sexual assault survivors like myself, like the Cuomo survivors. And they were actually going after to discredit, like not just trolling, but to discredit. And that's really dangerous. So to your point, you're hearing the nihilist thing and those buzzwords. And it makes me smile because I think about my philosophy teacher and how much they would love to hear that nihilism is being used. And sometimes I was sharing with you, I do feel personally nihilist, but of course we're feeling nihilistic. Like right now, you know what they're going to try to do? They're going to try to actually get the student loan debt forgiven. That's the latest rumor, whether it happens or not. And what you're going to see is a flurry of all these progressive, crumbs being thrown up through the summer until the fall to try to like booster the amazing loss that they are going to suffer in the fall. So that's all you're seeing. As far as Nina Turner, I don't know her personally. I used to try to interact with her. She doesn't, these people are not very beta. She doesn't try to interact with me. She doesn't share. She doesn't talk about me. She doesn't, I think once publicly she may have, but
the quote is that she'll disappoint us,
anything to do
right?
With what happened with Biden.
Right.
Yeah.
And so nihilism, back to that, that of course, we're dealing with inflation. We're dealing with possibly World War III. And people are feeling like, okay, you said Trump was worse. We voted for Biden and now look at our lives. They're shit.
Yeah.
They're shit. And now you're telling us we have to vote for this one person. Well, that one person, and let's say she's the best representative that you could have, the best progressive you could have. She's up against a corrupt machine. So I have to agree with Jordan. He made some good points about just the inherent corruptness of electoral politics right now. So that point was good. But of course they're shifting the blame to voters because they're like, here we have Nina Turner, here we have this great candidate, now vote. And people are like, too late.
How is she different?
I tweeted this out earlier, I think about an hour ago, to Jordan, and just asking him, like, where's the strategy for Nina to go to counter the Democratic Party? Like, is she really going to go back toe to toe with Nancy Pelosi? Is she really?
Well, and today, today on Jimmy, Sabby was brought on to talk about this too, who's in chat. She says, hi, Tara. Nice to see Sabby here.
Hi, Sabby.
But love Sabbies. The doobie doos. But yeah, I mean, she talked about this at length on Jimmy and killed it. So if people haven't seen that, go check that when the clip comes out. That's going to be good. But
I do want to go into nihilism a little bit because, well, shout out to Big Man Crab in the chat. Yeah, this is definitely more of a philosophical term. I failed philosophy in college. Okay, so
I failed philosophy. I failed algebra, so
I did fail philosophy. So I have the definition here, but even here, for me in my little brain, it's, well, according to the dictionary, a viewpoint that traditional values and beliefs are unfounded and existence is senseless and meaningless. You kind of make, well, it kind of makes sense to me, but it doesn't. As I said, it's more of a philosophical term. And then during the prep last night, I actually found a good article that I think kind of explains it better than probably what I ever could. And so this article is from Nolan Kurtz, who is connected with MIT. And I think he gives, and I didn't clip the whole thing just for time, but I think there's enough of it to just kind of share, just to encourage people, you're not nihilist, in thinking the way that you're thinking. You might be other things, which I think would be a more accurate definition, but a nihilist is definitely not the term that you people should be using. So I'll just read the article real quick. So the article, and we'll link it at some point, if you guys want to read the whole thing, what nihilism is not. So nihilism, not unlike time, according to Augustine, or porn, according to the US Supreme Court, is one of those concepts that we all are pretty sure we know the meaning of, unless someone asks us to define it. Nihili means nothing, ism means ideology. Yet when we try to combine those terms, the combination seems to immediately refute itself as the idea that nihilism is the ideology of nothing, as being nonsensical. To say that this means that someone believes in nothing is not really much more helpful, as believing in something suggests there is something to be believed in. But if that something is nothing, then there is something to be believed in which case believing in nothing is again a self-refuting idea.
Yeah. In the
next slide.
Next slide. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. It is easy, therefore, to fall into the trap of thinking everything is nihilism, which of course leads to thinking nothing is nihilism. Thus, in order to preserve nihilism as a meaningful concept, it is necessary to distinguish it from concepts that are often associated with it, but are nevertheless different. Concepts such as pessimism, cynicism, and apathy. Nihilism versus pessimism. If optimism is hopefulness, then pessimism is hopelessness. To be a pessimist is to say, what's the point? Pessimism is often likened to a glass is half empty way of seeing the world. But since it's only half empty, this scenario might still be too hopeful for a pessimist. A better scenario might be that if a pessimist fell into a well, and if someone offered to rescue him, he would likely respond, why bother? In the well, out of the well, we're all going to die anyway. In other words, pessimism is dark and depressing, but it is not a nihilism. In fact, we might even go as far to say that pessimism is the opposite of nihilism. Like of nihilism, pessimism could be seen as a rising from despair. The fact of our death, the frustration of our desires, the unintended consequences of our actions, the tweets of our political leaders, any or all of these things could either lead us to either nihilism or pessimism. However, where these two roads diverge is over the question of whether we dwell on our despair or hide from it.
And next.
To be with a pessimist is to know that you are with a pessimist, but you can be with a nihilist and have no idea. Indeed, you could yourself be a nihilist and have no idea. Such a lack of awareness is the point of a nihilism, as nihilism is all about hiding from despair rather than dwelling on it.
Yeah.
Okay. If, as the author suggested earlier, nihilism and pessimism are opposites, then nihilism is actually much closer to optimism. To see the glass as half full is to think that we should be happy with what we have rather than focus on what is missing. But being happy with what we have can also be a way of remaining complacent, of ignoring what is missing so as to avoid having to seek change, or maybe in this case, not being willing to make alternate plans. Similarly, to believe that everything will work out in the end, that there is always light at the end of the tunnel, is to believe that life is teleological, that there is some goal or purpose, whether God or justice, operating invisibly behind what we experience. It is by believing in the existence of superhuman goals and superhuman purposes that we lose sight of human goals and human purposes. Likewise, when we elevate someone like MLK to the status of a saint or prophet, we see him as more than a mere mortal, thus freeing ourselves from the responsibility of trying to emulate him, since we simply have to be hopeful that someone like him will come again. If optimism leads us to be complacent, leads us to wait for something good to happen or for someone else to make something good to happen, then optimism leads us to nothing. In other words, it is not pessimism, but optimism that is similar to nihilism. Cynicism, like pessimism, is about negativity. However, whereas pessimism is about despair, about the feeling that life is pointless in the face of death, cynicism is instead much more about disdain than despair. A cynic wouldn't say that life is pointless, but would just say that what people claim about life is pointless. A cynic can even enjoy life. In particular, a cynic can take pleasure in mocking those who claim that altruism exists or that politicians are self-sacrificing public servants, especially finds laughable the idea that we should try to see the good in people. Pessimists are not a nihilist because pessimists embrace rather than invade despair. Cynics are not nihilists because cynics embrace rather than invade mendacity. A key part of evading despair is the willingness to believe that people can be good, that goodness is rewarded, and such rewards can exist even if we do not experience them. But to a cynic, such a willingness to believe is a willingness to be naive, to be gullible, and to be manipulated. The cynic mocks such beliefs not because the cynic claims to know that such beliefs are necessarily false, but because the cynic is aware of the danger necessarily represented by people who claim to know that such beliefs are necessarily true. The cynic presents itself or herself as a realist, as someone who cares about actions, not intentions, who focuses on what people do rather than on what people hope to achieve, who remembers the failed promises of the past in order to avoid being swept up in the not yet failed promises about the future. The idealist, however, rejects cynicism as hopelessly negative. By focusing on intentions, on hopes, and on the future, the idealist is able to provide a positive vision to oppose the negativity of the cynic. But in rejecting cynicism, does the idealist also reject reality? And so all of that, I think this last part, I think especially holds true, just as far as, again, nihilism, I think, is not the appropriate term, to call people who are just kind of, turned off, just as far as electoral politics. Cynicism, definitely appropriate. Pessimist, definitely appropriate. But to say that we are nihilists because, we want, I think it's the idea of like wanting the Democratic Party to essentially be destroyed, which personally I would like, but
yeah,
but destroy the system of itself, but not, the people that would it affect. I think we should be a little more mindful of, again, this is just a way of punching down to voters, to shame them low key, and to make us feel a certain way as far as these larger channels who kind of say we don't have to do anything,
Yeah,
and if anything,
what you're talking about is how they're trying to shift responsibility.
Right. And so, and as I say to Kyle, as I say to Crystal, as I say to Jordan, it's very easy to talk down to us, but you have the access to talk to many of these politicians. What are you saying to them to, especially what are the channels as far as, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, how do we keep you accountable? If there's no talk about that at all. And so,
well, you know what it reminds me of? I kind of had an epiphany. It reminds me of domestic violence. When you're in court, they always ask, well, why did she go back? Why did she go back? And I used to say, as an expert witness, when I would talk about this, I'd say, the question isn't about the victim. The question is about the abuser.
Right.
So what I would say to Jordan and to Kyle and to all of them is, the question isn't about the voters, whether they're nihilistic or defeatist. I think what obviously there's a discontent in our country for obvious reasons, because an elite group of people are basically using voters to get power. And then once they retain the power, they are delving into corruption. We have a very corrupt country right now. It's trash.
Ms. Tar, can you bring your mic a little closer?
So there's this awakening. So I guess it's flip the question. Why are our politicians so abusive?
Right.
Yeah.
And
corrupt.
And so it's just the idea of the system. It's not necessarily the individual person. Like, again, I don't know many of these politicians in person. I'm sure and I'm going to be very nice because some people say I might be too mean. I don't think so, but I'll be very nice. I'll be wholesome right now and say, let's assume that they have the best of intentions. They're going against the machine that is the corporations, that is the donor class, that is the big banks that they have to contend with. And the question that no one is asking is, what are you going to do to deal with that? It's not even so much Nancy Pelosi in a sense, because she's controlled by the machine herself. So,
she's raking in some profit.
She's benefiting from it. But even Nancy Pelosi, like she's doing the bidding of what they're asking her to do, so even Joe Biden himself. So the question is, and what we should be asking is, what are we going to do as far as the corporate interests that have a stranglehold on both parties to ensure that we get what we want? And, you know, and unfortunately, we've seen in the squad, you know, like they're not willing or cannot, or whatever reason, they're not doing it. And so I feel like I get why people are a little concerned about Nina Turner. Now, you know, is she better than Chantel Brown? Sure. But that doesn't mean, you know, she's going against the same machine. She's going against the same dragon, as she said before. And so the concern is there is no talk about how she's going to combat that, if at all. It's just like, well, we're just put in there and hope for the best. We can't afford to think that way, you know, especially if you're the working poor. We can't do that to people. And so there is a shift right now to talk about mutual aid, to talk about direct action, because those are the means that are able to move the country, you know, into the direction where we want it to go. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, that's really all. So really, this is not really a rant. This is more of a, and I was being very friendly, I think, but more of a friendly critique.
We have Jay Buffon and his opinions on this.
And
real quick,
I'm not going to go into that.
Tara, if you want to bring your mic a little closer, like half a foot, maybe.
Are you having trouble hearing me?
Yeah, the people at home. A little more would be nice.
How about that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
I got you right in the yellows.
Just want to
go ahead.
I'm not going to go into this for too much longer, but, you know, I just want to give, you know, I have to, you know, stand with JB, you know, just as far as, you know, like the fact that, you know, those of you who know him, like, you know, he's on dialysis, he's disabled, he has having issues with his family, you know, but, you know, he has everything that he could say to have, you know, if I'm going to call his definition of a defeatist attitude. But what he's doing, he's coming on here. He's coming on this, you know, he's coming online. He's talking to people about the possibilities of what we can do, you know, and like trying to give people a better option. People who are probably better off than him, he's trying to connect with people in that way. That doesn't sound defeatist to me. That doesn't sound nihilistic to me, you know, like, and it's not just him, it's others, you know, like us, who are trying to say, we got to take matters into our own hands and do something else apart from government to ensure that we can help people right now. And you know, and again, shout out to Savvy, I know she's in the chat too, you know, like who is really trying to push this idea that it's not about electoral versus, you know, direct action mutual aid. Both are needed. But right now, especially since electoral politics isn't really working to the way that we want to, and we're in desperate measures right now, there needs to be more of a shift to direct action. There needs to be more of a shift to mutual aid, because those are the things that are able to help people buy right now. Is it a perfect solution? Well, as far as mutual aid, is it a perfect solution? No, but it's something that all of us have the responsibility that we can do to ensure, like, those of us who are in desperate need can make the difference where our government leaders are not necessarily be able to.
Well, and I always felt like
that's all I really got to say.
For me, recently, you know, my political awakening shifted from electoral to more activist and direct action and stuff like that, because I could clearly see that the ones we had elected had no threat of anything. Right? There's no one coming to them and going, hey, all that stuff you said you'd do that we liked, do that. You know, there's no almost follow-up with these people that gave us these IOUs. Right? So to me, that's where direct action comes into place. And you should be, the people you should be directly interacting with is the people that said they would give you these things. Right? And that to me is the big key detail, that when people tell us not to do that, it gives me big red flags. So
I'll just say this last thing, and this is directed at Jordan, you know, like Jordan, again, I watched your stream, you know, and I responded to you on Twitter. You're probably not going to respond to me, but I don't really care. I just needed to say my piece. You know, you have an opportunity right now, especially since you're now partnering with Breaking Points, and with what you have gained as far as being a journalist on the ground, you are probably in a better position than most to speak to, and you have, as far as especially what you've spoken to in regards to Flint, you have an idea of what people are struggling with. And so my challenge to you is, are you willing to go on Breaking Points and bring this up, you know, to that audience? Can you push Crystal and Sagar and anyone else who's connected with them to talk more about the idea of mutual aid, of direct action, you know, and can they actually engage people in their audiences of ways that they could support people who are in desperate need? Because it's, I mean, it's, yeah, they're going to have the politicians on, you know, and they're going to say what they're going to say, fine. But how about you talk to actual people who are living this out? You know, they have the means to be able to do that. And so that's just my call out to Jordan. You know, like, I'm not going to fight you, you know, like, I'm not going to, you know, punch down on you, whatever. This is just from a person, you know, who has struggled himself, who has seen enough suffering, you know, around me. And you are in a position where you're able to impact more change than I do, just based on your position. Consider that, you know, with your partnership in terms of.
Go ahead. You got a little bit to finish up?
Just consider that in terms of your partnership, of how to elevate the reality of what it is to be working poor in this country on a bigger platform, so that there could be alternatives besides focusing on just electoral politics.
Yeah. So Cynic Girl also wants to have people, you know, convince people to redirect their donations, contributions away from rich, corrupt politicians in the duopoly and give it to those mutual aid supports, you know, as essentially pittance for not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing, which, you know, but yeah, that she feels we need to definitely shift that funding. Sabby wants to tell us as well, Jordan's from an upper class family on Long Island, from Long Island.
Yeah.
So that definitely makes a bit of a biasy there, but yeah. I just feel like this is the people.
And I think that speaks to the bigger problem, right, Reef? I mean, like what the bigger problem is that you have this elite class bubble on the East Coast that really isn't dealing with the reality of the rest of the country. And they all go to each other's cocktail parties and they all like maybe talk shit like on and their media platforms, but you know, they're all hanging out together. They're all going to each other's weddings. They're all like, and they're in a little clique. And it's like what happens is with the politicians and the media, and I saw this over and over and over again. And what a journalist will tell you is, if I say something like this, or if I do that or take this position, I'll lose access.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you have is even YouTubers fall into that when they say, well, I'm not going to bring this up on this show because I'll lose access. And sometimes you do. Like, for instance, there are shows that don't have me back because I called out all the politicians who engaged in sexual misconduct. And maybe there was one party who was like, we don't want to talk about our problem. We want to talk about the Democrats' problem. Right.
Yeah.
So, but back to this, you know, none of this is anything different than it was back in the 90s. We're still having the same circular conversations, just with different vernacular for this time period, but same circular conversations. And all of it is around keeping us from having a third party or fourth party. All of this, it is about keeping and maintaining that duopoly, because that serves the corporate interest. So Collin, you hit it on the head. It has nothing to do with nihilism, it has nothing to do with defeatism. People are upset, people are feeling disengaged, but again, don't blame the voters. Let's look at the cause, like you were saying, and let's hope that, you know, Jordan, as you mentioned, goes on one of these shows and actually talks about the corruption, you know, that's happening. And in particular, you know, the squad. I mean, to me, what was sad about Bernie Sanders is, well, first of all, Bernie Sanders won't even put my name in his mouth. He won't even discuss that I exist. Yeah. Second of all, he, you know, he took money from people who didn't have money and then did nothing. And he wants to do it again. So that's, it's not defeatism. It's just reality.
Yeah.
It's just what people are like. It's like the definition of insanity. You don't keep doing the same thing over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Like Albert Einstein said.
One of those. Is
you
that
got
him?
It.
Hold on. I gotta reset this. Why does Google Slides hate me? I wish I knew.
It's just amazing because these same conversations were happening in the 90s. I mean, exactly the same. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of, well, I was a teenager and like not into politics at all, but like I felt like even back then there were these discussions. And
speaking of 90s, where everyone's real fear of nihilism came from.
Nice marmot.
There we go. Thank you. My favorite movie.
Not the marmot.
You think we are kidding or making with the funny stuff?
That's what you think. You haven't dreamed of Lebowski.
Yeah, we believe in nothing.
We believe in nothing.
We believe in nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is my favorite movie. Reef.
Is it? It's pretty good. It's one of my favorites.
I love The Big Lebowski. Oh. I have watched that at least 8 times.
It's
I need to watch it again soon.
It's one of my favorites. But anyway, we have another story.
Abides.
He really